My female colleagues have been acting strange for the past year. They always seem to have flushed faces and are constantly drenched in sweat in the middle of the office. When one of them suddenly requested maternity leave, I thought it was just a coincidence. But within a single month, every woman in the company was pregnant. They all applied for leave at the same time, bringing my business to a complete standstill. I was beyond furious. I confronted them, asking if they were trying to sabotage me on purpose. They avoided my gaze, their expressions full of a shame they couldn't even put into words. I didn't hesitate. I called the police. When the truth finally came to light, I collapsed to the floor in terror. My only thought was to shut down the company as fast as I could. My company, Vance Creative, mostly hires women because the benefits are excellent. Everyone works incredibly hard. My married employees even promised not to plan for children within the first 3 years of their contracts. Thanks to their dedication, the company grew rapidly. We were expanding every month. I made sure to return the favor. I gave out bonuses, covered health premiums, and ordered catered snacks every single afternoon. My team was more motivated than ever. One of them even joked that she planned to stay until retirement because of the perks. About a year ago, we landed a massive project. If we pulled this off, the company would reach an entirely new level of success. I thought everything would go smoothly, but soon after, I noticed the women in the office were acting off. Wasn't even summer yet, but they always looked like they were suffering from a heat wave. Their faces were perpetually red, and sweat would bead on their foreheads. Even with the AC blasting, nothing changed. I finally asked them about it one afternoon. Is the AC broken? You all look like you're burning up. One of my senior leads, Linda Sterling, spoke up hesitantly. Celine, I'm pregnant. I need to file for maternity leave. I'm so sorry, she added. I know. I promised not to do this for 3 years. I realized then that she must have been terrified of my reaction. That's why she looked so tense and flushed. The others probably knew and had been helping her hide it. That explained their guilty looks. Whenever I walked by, I sighed, trying to be understanding. Pregnancy is a blessing, Linda. I'm not a monster. You've done so much for this firm already. I approved her leave and even had the HVAC system serviced. I hoped that would be the end of the distractions. But the other women continued to act strange. They were constantly restless, their faces glowing with a deep, unnatural red. They couldn't focus on their screens for more than 10 minutes. Was the overtime finally catching up to them? Was it a collective health issue? I decided this couldn't go on. I announced that everyone would get a 2-day paid break, and no more overtime for the next week. To my surprise, they weren't happy. We can't do that, one argued. We need the overtime pay. The economy is rough, and we want to make as much as possible. Besides, it's better to finish the project and take a real vacation. After another added, we're just a little stressed. It's probably just seasonal allergies or something. I had no choice but to respect their wishes. I upgraded the afternoon snacks to include more cooling drinks and stocked the break room with premium herbal detox teas. A few days later, their condition worsened. Even with the thermostat set to 60 degrees, they were panting. If a client walked in, they'd think we were running some kind of inappropriate underground club. People started showing up late. When I asked why, they just stammered and looked at the floor. This time I didn't ask. I mandated a 4-day break, including the weekend. I was sure they just needed sleep. When I made the announcement, they didn't cheer. Instead, as soon as the meeting was dismissed, they all bolted for the restrooms. I frowned. I noticed one employee, Sarah, still sitting in her chair looking completely dazed. I tapped her shoulder. Are you okay? Maybe you should see a doctor. She jumped like she'd been electrocuted. She clamped her legs together instantly, her face turning a shade of crimson I'd never seen before. No, I'm fine, she gasped. Seeing her reaction, my heart sank. A dark, ridiculous thought crossed my mind. I've lived with my boyfriend for a long time. We've had our fair share of private moments at home. I knew that look, the shame, the physical restlessness, the loss of breath. She looked exactly like I did during our most intimate nights. And the others, they were showing the same signs. But this was a professional office. How could they all be doing something so scandalous? And as a group, anger surged through me. My rational side tried to fight the thought. They weren't those kinds of people. Maybe it was just a strange virus affecting their hormones. I watched them pack their bags and scurry out with guilty expressions. My mind was a mess of confusion and hurt. I decided that once the break was over, I would organize a mandatory health screening for the whole staff. That evening, I met my best friend, Maisie, and told her everything. She dropped her glass, shattering it on the floor. Celine, that's insane. I've met your team. They're professional, hard-working women. There's no way they're having a secret orgy at the office. I rubbed my temples. I want to believe that. But their reactions, the guilt. It's so obvious. Maisie cleaned up the glass and patted my shoulder. Don't spiral. You're doing the health check, right? Just wait for the results. There's probably a logical explanation. I tried to relax, but for the next 4 days, I barely slept. I felt like I was losing control of the company I built from nothing. On Monday morning, I was actually late to my own office. As I pulled into the parking lot, my head of HR called me. Celine, you need to get up here now. My stomach twisted. I hurried inside. The office was eerily quiet. Only a few interns were at their desks. The project fail? Did something happen to the servers? I burst into the HR office. A dozen women were crowded inside. My HR manager looked like she was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. I can't approve this, the manager was saying. We have to wait for Celine. I stepped forward. What's going on? The manager turned and handed me a thick stack of papers. As I read them, my vision blurred with rage. Every single one of them was pregnant. They were all filing for maternity leave simultaneously. The medical certificates were like slaps to my face. I looked at them, some married, some single. They all looked away, their faces full of that same agonizing shame. Suddenly, everything clicked. The flushed faces, the running to the bathroom, the restlessness. This wasn't a coincidence. This was a coordinated strike. I had spent years trying to support women in the workplace. I gave them the best pay, the best hours, and a safe environment. And this was how they repaid me, by sabotaging the company, right before our biggest deadline. If I approved these leaves, the firm would go bankrupt. Why, I whispered. I had treated them like family. I didn't understand how they could be this cruel. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the room. None of them could look me in the eye. They just kept mumbling, I'm sorry, over and over. For a second, I searched for a reason to forgive them. Maybe they had a secret reason. But the stack of papers in my hand was too heavy to ignore. Say something, I screamed. Why are you doing this to me? I can't replace all of you in time. If this project fails, I'll be sued for millions. You'll all sit at home collecting checks while I lose everything. If I fire you, I have to pay massive settlements. I was losing it. I felt utterly betrayed. Linda Sterling finally spoke up. Celine, we didn't mean for this to happen. It's just. She stopped biting her lip. She looked like she wanted to crawl into a hole and die. It's just what? Speak up. The company is going to die because of you. People always warned me about hiring only women. I told them they were wrong. I told them you were loyal. But you're just as bad as they said. You're disgusting. Doing those things in the office just to get pregnant. Together. You're the reason women face discrimination. They looked at me with wide, horrified eyes. They couldn't believe those words came out of my mouth without a word. They all pulled out their phones. One by one. They submitted their formal resignations through the company portal. They walked back to their desks to pack their belongings. I almost threw my phone across the room. Maisie had been standing at the door watching the whole thing. She walked in and frowned. Celine, that was harsh. Way too harsh. Harsh. I snapped. They just burned my life down. I should have said worse, Maisie sighed. We're women too. Celine. Calling them those names. You sounds exactly like the sexist bosses we used to hate. These women work day and night for you. They helped you land this project. Don't you think there's more to the story? I let out a bitter laugh. What story could possibly justify destroying my company? Maisie didn't have an answer. It's just too weird. Why would they all do this at the same time? Were they bribed, blackmailed? She asked. Just check everything before you do something you'll regret. You have a good heart, Celine. That's why you've been so good to them. I turned away, my mind spinning. I was torn between the logic of my friend and the cold reality of my empty office. The resignation notifications kept pinging on the HR computer. It was making me sick. Fine. Investigate whatever you want. I don't have the energy, I said, collapsing into my chair. The office felt like a graveyard. All the desks were being cleared out. The AC was still on, but I felt a freezing chill in my bones. I checked my messages. Some of the women promised to train the interns remotely. Others said they would help find freelancers to cover the project. I didn't care. The betrayal was too deep. Why would they all get pregnant now? It made no sense. Even a competitor wouldn't use such a bizarre tactic. Then Macy's words echoed in my head. If I didn't find out the truth, I'd never move on. But I wasn't going to play detective. I was going to call the professionals. I went straight to the police station. I reported them for intentional business sabotage and damaging company assets. Since the mass departure was clearly coordinated and would result in massive financial loss, the police opened an investigation. They summoned all the pregnant employees for questioning. I sat in the station, my hands shaking. I was finally going to get the truth. The women arrived one by one. They looked at me with a mix of sadness and pity. I was allowed to listen in on Linda Sterling's interrogation. She was only a year older than me, and we used to get drinks every Friday. Now she looked haggard and broken. Was this planned? The detective asked. Linda gave a sad, weary smile. No, I didn't want to get pregnant. I'm at the peak of my career. This is the worst time for me. I felt a pang of guilt. Linda was a workaholic. She loved her job more than anyone. Then why did you all conceive at the exact same time? The detective pressed. Linda's face turned bright red again. She looked like she was about to cry. It was a coincidence, a horrible one. About a year ago, I started feeling strange. I was too busy to go to the doctor. And honestly, the symptoms were too embarrassing to talk about. She twisted her hands together so hard. Her knuckles turned white. She struggled to find the words. Finally, she whispered. I had these overwhelming physical urges. She let out a sob. I couldn't help myself. I kept wanting to be with my husband. It was constant. The pregnancy was a complete accident. Celine was right. I am shameless. I have some kind of disgusting sickness. My mind went blank. She was sick. I wanted to finish the project first. Linda continued. But when Celine gave us those days off, I almost lost the baby. The doctor said my body is in terrible shape. He said if I don't rest now, I'll never have a chance to be a mother again. I had to leave. I didn't know everyone else was going through the same thing. She looked through the glass at me. Oline, I'm so sorry. I could tell she wasn't lying. She was suffering. And I had called her a monster. The reports from the other rooms started coming in. The detective's expression grew grim as he read them. They all have the same story. Every single one of them developed the same symptoms. At roughly the same time. Does that sound possible to you? He asked me. I froze. A contagious libido that was impossible. Then a memory flashed in my mind. Something small, something we all ignored. Officer, we need to go back to my office right now. Officer, we need to go back to my office right now. Detective Miller's brow furrowed, but he didn't argue. He signaled to his partner, and within minutes, we were in the back of an unmarked cruiser, speeding through the rainy streets back to Vance Creative. My heart hammered against my ribs, loud and frantic. A contagious libido? No, that was biological nonsense. But a localized, chemically induced hormonal spike. That was entirely possible. Ms. Vance, Miller said, gripping the steering wheel as the wipers slapped away. The rain. What exactly are we looking for? About a year ago, I began, my voice trembling with a mixture of dread and dawning clarity. We landed the Horizon account. It was the biggest tech launch of the decade. We beat out 3 massive, male-dominated legacy firms to get it. The day we signed the contract, an anonymous well-wisher sent a gift to the office. What kind of gift? A high-end custom-built beverage bar. Espresso, matcha, infused waters. It was fully stocked, with a prepaid, year-long maintenance contract. The technician came every Friday to refill the proprietary syrups and nutrient blends. I swallowed hard, feeling physically sick. I'm a black coffee purist. I bring my own beans from home. I never touched the stuff. But my team lived on it. They joked it was the secret to their energy. Miller's jaw tightened. He hit the sirens. When we pushed through the glass doors of Vance Creative, the silence of the empty office felt entirely different. It no longer felt like a graveyard of my failures. It felt like a crime scene. I led Miller straight to the break room. There it sat in the corner, sleek, silver, and softly humming, the Vitality station. Miller pulled on a pair of latex gloves. He carefully removed the back panel of the machine. Inside, nestled among the water lines and coffee grinders, were 4 heavy, unmarked glass canisters attached to the infusion pumps. The liquid inside was faintly pink. Don't touch it, Miller warned his partner, who was bagging the machine's components. He looked at me, his eyes grim. We're taking this entire unit to the state toxicology lab. And I need the name of the maintenance company. Apex Vending Solutions, I said instantly. I have their invoices in my office. While the police dismantled the machine, I sat at my desk. My hands shook as I pulled up my email, searching for the original delivery confirmation. My mind raced back over the last 12 months. The flushed cheeks, the sweating, the manic, restless energy that I had mistaken for dedication and stress. Someone had poisoned my team. Someone had violated their bodies, hijacked their chemistry, and forced them into the most intimate, humiliating torment imaginable, all while sitting in their cubicles. And I had called them monsters. I had screamed at them. Tears, hot and bitter, finally spilled over my cheeks. I picked up my phone. I had to fix this. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by my phone until 6 a.m., waiting for Miller's call. When it finally came, his voice was heavy. Celine, you were right. The lab rushed the panels. Those canisters weren't vitamin syrups. They were heavily concentrated, synthetic endocrine disruptors, mixed with a highly illegal designer compound resembling flibanserin, but much stronger. It forces the pituitary gland into overdrive. It triggers extreme ovulation, skyrocketing estrogen and testosterone levels, and severe vasodilation, which explains the flushed skin and sweating. I felt the air leave my lungs. Is it permanently dangerous? The doctors are reviewing it. Because your staff took time off and stopped drinking it, their hormone levels are already starting to crash back to normal. The pregnancies, however. He paused. It wasn't an accident, Celine. This was a targeted chemical assault. Apex Vending, I breathed. Did you find them? A shell company. Registered to a P.O. box in Delaware. But we're following the money. In the meantime, you need to talk to your employees. They are victims of a mass poisoning. I hung up. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They were perfectly still, locked. In a cold, absolute fury, I opened my laptop and created a mass Zoom link. I sent it to every single woman who had resigned the day before. The subject line read, "I am so sorry. Please, I need 5 minutes of your time. You are not at fault." At 8 a.m., the screen began to populate. One by one they appeared. Linda, Sarah, Chloe, Jessica. Some were crying. Most wouldn't look at the camera. They looked exhausted, diminished, wearing oversized hoodies in dim rooms. The vibrant, brilliant women who had built my company were shattered. "I am recording this," I started, my voice cracking before I forced it into a steady, commanding tone. "Because I need you to have proof of what I am about to say. You are not sick. You are not shameless. And you have nothing to be guilty for." The video tiles shifted. A few of them looked up, confusion cutting through their misery. "The break room beverage machine was rigged," I said. "For the past year you have all been subjected to a massive, illegal dose of synthetic hormones. It was designed to trigger extreme arousal and hyperfertility. The police have the machine. The lab confirmed it this morning." A heavy, stunned silence fell over the call. Then Sarah let out a sound, a primal, ragged gasp. She covered her mouth, her shoulders violently shaking as she broke down into heaving sobs. Next to her tile, Linda closed her eyes, tears streaming down her pale face as she pressed a hand to her stomach. "We were poisoned," I said, the words tasting like ash. "Someone wanted you distracted. Someone wanted you pregnant and sidelined. They used your biology as a weapon to destroy this company and ruin the Horizon account. And I fell right into their trap. I looked directly into the camera. I failed you. My job was to protect you, and instead, when you were suffering the most, I punished you. I called you names. I will regret that for the rest of my life. If you never want to speak to me again, I understand. I will personally fund every medical bill, every severance, every legal fee you need." Linda unmuted herself. Her voice was raspy, but the defeated slump of her shoulders was gone. A dangerous spark had returned to her eyes. "Celine," Linda said. "Who did this?" "I don't know yet. But the police are tracing the shell company." "The Horizon account," Sarah chimed in, wiping her eyes fiercely with the back of her sleeve. "Who were the runners-up when we won the bid?" "Kensington Media, Vanguard Communications, and Cross Media Group," I listed. "Damien Cross," Linda murmured. "He's notorious. He gave an interview 2 years ago saying all female agencies were a liability because women are driven by hormones, not logic." The realization hit me like a freight train. Damien Cross, the arrogant, slick CEO who had cornered me at a networking gala the night we won the bid, whispering in my ear that I was in over my head and my little sorority would crumble before the deadline. "If we fail the final delivery next Friday," Jessica said quietly, "Horizon has a contingency clause. They instantly passed the contract to the runner-up, Cross Media." "He poisoned us," Sarah said, her voice dropping to a terrifyingly calm whisper. "He drugged us to prove a point, to steal our work." "We are pressing charges," I said. "The police will take months to build a case," Linda interrupted. She leaned closer to her webcam. The shame that had suffocated her for a year was entirely gone, replaced by a radiant, lethal rage. "If we default next Friday, Cross wins. He gets the account. He gets the money. And we get to be the cautionary tale of the pregnant, hysterical women." "Linda, you need to rest," I pleaded. The doctor said I needed to be away from the stress of the office," Linda corrected. "He didn't say I couldn't type from my sofa." She looked at the other tiles on the screen. "Ladies, we have 5 days until the Horizon deadline. The project is 80% done." "I have my laptops at home," Chloe said, sitting up straighter. "I can do the rendering from bed," Sarah added, a vicious smile touching her lips. "I'll reject your resignations," I said, my heart swelling with a fierce, overwhelming pride. Everyone goes on immediate, fully paid remote status. I will hire couriers to bring you whatever you need. Groceries, laptops, servers, ergonomic pillows. But only if you are physically up to it. Celine, Linda said, her eyes burning with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. We are going to crush this deadline. We are going to build a campaign. So perfect it makes Damien Cross choke on it. And then, we are going to bury him. The next 5 days were a masterclass in vengeance. My empty office became a central command center. Maisie, having heard the full truth, took a leave of absence from her own job to act as my second in command. She coordinated a fleet of delivery drivers, shuttling hard drives, premium catering, strictly from trusted local kitchens, and medical supplies to my team's homes. I stayed on a perpetual, open Zoom call with the team. Watching them work was like watching a symphony of controlled fury. The chemical fog that had clouded their minds for a year was lifting. Without the daily dosage of the endocrine disruptor, their focus returned with terrifying sharpness. They were pregnant, exhausted, and traumatized, but they channeled every ounce of that violation into the code, the graphics, and the strategy. Meanwhile, Detective Miller was making quiet progress. On Wednesday night, he showed up at my office with a file. "You hit the nail on the head, Celine," he said, dropping the manila folder on my desk. Apex Vending Solutions was funded through a Cayman account. It took our cyber guys 3 days to pierce the veil, but we found the primary shareholder, Damien Cross. I closed my eyes, exhaling a shaky breath. "You have proof." "Wire transfers. Emails between Cross and a disgraced biochemist who manufactured the serum. We even have the security footage of Cross's fixer paying the maintenance guy who swapped the canisters every Friday." Miller smiled, a hard, cold expression. "It's a slam dunk. Corporate espionage, mass poisoning, assault. He's looking at 20 years minimum." "Arrest him," I said. "We are. Warrants are being signed tomorrow morning." Miller looked at the massive digital countdown clock I had projected on the office wall. 36 hours to Horizon delivery. "Do you still want to do the presentation? You have legal grounds for an extension now." "No," I said, standing up. "Damien Cross thinks we're broken. He thinks we've already lost. If you arrest him tomorrow, he'll just play the victim. I want him in the Horizon boardroom on Friday. I want him to watch me deliver the project." Miller chuckled. "You want to twist the knife?" "I want to gut his legacy," I corrected. "Can you delay the arrest until Friday afternoon?" Miller tapped the folder. "I'll have plainclothes officers in the lobby of the Horizon building. Give us the signal when you're done." Friday morning, the sky over Los Angeles was a brilliant, unyielding blue. I walked into the towering glass headquarters of Horizon Tech, wearing a sharp crimson suit, my hair pulled back into a severe knot. I carried a single sleek silver briefcase containing the final drive. When I entered the executive boardroom, the atmosphere was tense. The Horizon CEO Marcus Vance, no relation, just a coincidence of the corporate world, sat at the head of the long oak table. To my immediate lack of surprise, Damien Cross was sitting in the corner, nursing a coffee, flanked by 2 of his junior executives. "Celine," Marcus said, looking at me with a mix of pity and impatience. "I'll be honest. We heard rumors. Industry chatter says Vance Creative has suffered a mass walkout. Damien here offered to step in and provide a contingency presentation so our launch isn't delayed." Damien offered me a slick, sympathetic smile. "Nothing personal, Celine. It's just business. Women's agencies always struggle with retention. Biology gets in the way. It's a shame, really." I felt the urge to reach across the table and tear his throat out, but I kept my composure. I smiled back. "Industry chatter is often exaggerated, Damien," I said smoothly. I walked to the front of the room, plugged my drive into the mainframe, and brought up the projection screen. "Vance Creative hasn't suffered a walkout." I addressed the board. "We've transitioned to a decentralized workflow to maximize our output. And today I am proud to present the culmination of a year's worth of relentless, uncompromising work." I clicked the remote. For the next 45 minutes, I didn't just present a campaign. I unleashed a masterpiece. My team had poured their literal blood, sweat, and tears into the framework. The UI/UX design was flawless. The marketing algorithm was revolutionary, utilizing predictive analytics that Horizon hadn't even thought to ask for. Sarah had coded a backend so beautifully streamlined it reduced server load by 30%. Linda's strategic rollout plan was a work of art. As I spoke, I watched Damien Cross's smug expression slowly curdle into confusion, then panic, and finally, stark, sweating terror. He knew what he was looking at. He was looking at perfection. He was looking at the end of his company's relevance. In conclusion, I said, resting my hands on the podium, Vance Creative doesn't just meet the deadline. We redefine it. We are ready to launch today. The boardroom was dead silent. Then Marcus, the CEO of Horizon, stood up. Didn't just clap. He looked awestruck. Celine, that is the most spectacular pitch I have seen in 20 years. You have the contract. Unconditionally. Thank you, Marcus, I said. But before we sign the final addendums, there is one minor piece of business to attend to regarding our competitors. I pulled my phone from my pocket and sent a single text message to Detective Miller now. Damien stood up, his face flushed red. This is impossible. Your team couldn't possibly have finished this. They were what, Damien? I interrupted, my voice slicing through the room like a whip. They were pregnant. They were sick. They were losing their minds. The boardroom doors opened. Detective Miller stepped in, followed by 2 uniformed officers. Marcus frowned. What is the meaning of this? Damien Cross, Miller said, walking straight toward the corner. You are under arrest for 15 counts of aggravated assault, mass chemical poisoning, corporate espionage, and wire fraud. Damien backed into the wall, his coffee spilling onto the floor. This is insane. You have no proof. She's lying. We have the offshore accounts, Damien, Miller said, pulling out a pair of handcuffs. We have your emails with the chemist. We have the maintenance logs for the breakroom machine at Vance Creative. You drugged a dozen women with synthetic hormones to trigger pregnancies so they would fail this deadline. The entire Horizon board gasped. Marcus turned pale, stepping away from Damien, as if he were radioactive. You're a monster, Marcus whispered. As the officers wrenched Damien's arms behind his back, he locked eyes with me. His slick veneer was entirely gone, replaced by the pathetic, sniveling reality of a coward. You were supposed to fail. Damien spat, spittle flying from his lips. You stupid bitches were supposed to fall apart. I walked slowly up to him. I looked him up and down, feeling nothing but cold, absolute triumph. You misunderstood biology, Damien, I said softly. You thought you could weaponize our bodies against us. But all you did was show me exactly how unstoppable the women of Vance Creative really are. Enjoy prison. I turned my back on him as he was dragged out of the boardroom, screaming. 2 years later, the new offices of Vance Creative occupied the entire top floor of a downtown skyscraper. The natural light poured in through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating a space that was bustling, vibrant, and alive. There were no more catered detox teas. We had a strict bring-your-own-beverage policy, a joke that had become a beloved company tradition. I walked out of my office, a stack of quarterly reports in my hand, and paused at the glass doors of the East Wing. The East Wing wasn't a conference room. It was a state-of-the-art, fully staffed corporate daycare center. Through the glass, I could see Linda sitting on the padded floor, laughing as her beautiful, chubby-cheeked 1-year-old son tried to eat a foam block. Sarah was nearby, bouncing her twin girls on her knees while dictating an email into her headset. The poisoning had been a nightmare, a traumatic violation that none of us would ever truly forget. The class action lawsuit against Cross Media had bankrupted Damien's firm and yielded a settlement so massive it ensured every woman on my team had generational wealth. But they hadn't quit. None of them had. They had chosen to keep the babies. They had supported each other through the pregnancies, attending doctor's appointments in packs, sharing the fear, the anger, and eventually the joy. And when it was time to come back to work, I had redesigned the entire company around them. Flexible hours, on-site childcare, full autonomy. Maisie walked up beside me, handing me a cup of black coffee, brewed from the beans we kept locked in a secure cabinet in my office. Horizon just renewed the contract for another 5 years, Maisie said, smiling. And we have 3 more agencies begging us to take them on. Tell them they'll have to wait, I said, taking a sip of the coffee. My senior leads are busy. Linda caught my eye through the glass. She waved, her face glowing. Not with the unnatural, chemically induced flush of a year ago, but with genuine, vibrant happiness. I waved back. I had built a company. A man had tried to burn it down. But in the ashes of his pathetic sabotage, we had forged an empire. And God help anyone who ever tried to cross us again.